Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're really excited about the topic we're tackling today.
Absolutely.
It's something I know a lot of you have been struggling with, and that's speaking English faster.
Yeah.
So many learners feel like,
I think it's kind of a universal challenge.
yeah, they feel like they can't keep up with native speakers or they want to sound more fluent.
Right. And there's this kind of anxiety, I think, a lot of times of like, if I speak faster, I'm going to make more mistakes or people won't understand me.
Totally.
So we're going to unpack all of that today.
Yeah, today, and we're actually going to base this deep dive on a really cool YouTube video we found from the BBX Learning English podcast.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's called English Podcast Conversation, Fast English Speaking Tips, Learn English with Pods Eat 30.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's packed with practical tips and techniques.
Yeah, lots of really useful stuff.
And so our goal today is really to distill like the core essence of that.
Right.
And give you guys some really actionable strategies that you can use. Yeah. To speak English faster and more naturally without like freaking out or
Yeah, and without losing clarity.
Yeah, exactly.
That's important.
Without losing clarity.
Yeah.
So let's get started. So before we even jump into the specific techniques, I think it's helpful to take a step back and ask ourselves, like,
Why bother?
yeah, why bother? Like, why is it even important
Right.
to speak English faster?
Yeah, why is this a goal worth pursuing?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because some people might be thinking like, hey, as long as I'm understood,
Yeah,
like, why does
I figured.
it matter if I speak fast or slow?
Right.
So I think the video does a really good job of highlighting some of the key benefits. And one of the anecdotes that Julia, one of the hosts, shares is about how when she was a beginner,
Yeah.
she would speak so slowly that the conversation would just move on without her.
Yeah.
Like people would just get impatient.
Right.
Or they would just like,
Lose interest.
yeah, they would lose interest, or they would just continue the conversation with someone else and she would just be like kind of left behind.
Yeah, left out of the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think so many English learners have experienced that. It's really frustrating to feel like you have something to say, but you just can't get it out fast enough.
Yeah, and it's not just about feeling left out. It's also about like, if you're in a work meeting
Yeah.
and you're trying to make a point,
Right.
but you're speaking so slowly that people are like losing track of what you're saying.
Right. They're getting distracted. They're checking your phones,
Yeah, or they're interrupting you.
Yeah.
Or, maybe they just think that you don't really understand what's going on.
Right. You seem hesitant. You seem unsure.
Yeah.
And that can really affect how people perceive you.
Yeah. And then also like think about situations like job interviews or, public speaking.
Yeah.
When you speak more quickly and fluently, it just projects this air of confidence.
Right. It makes you seem more competent, more credible.
Yeah. It's like you're more sure of yourself.
Exactly.
Even if like you're saying the same thing, it just comes across differently.
Yeah. It's the delivery that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And I think the video also makes this really interesting point, which is that speaking faster can actually improve your listening comprehension.
Yeah.
Because when you're used to speaking at a faster pace, your brain becomes more adept at processing information at that speed as well.
It's like your brain is like, okay, we're operating at this speed now.
Yeah.
Like everything's got to catch up.
It's like a workout for your brain.
Yeah.
It's getting faster and more efficient at processing the language.
Yeah. And I think this is something that's often overlooked. People think, oh, I just need to focus on my listening. But actually, like,
It's all connected.
it's all connected. Like the more fluent you become in speaking, the better your listening will become as well.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
I think the more you listen to fast English, the easier it will become to speak faster yourself.
Totally.
Because you're kind of getting used to the rhythm and the intonation.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So, but, before we go any further, we do need to make a really important clarification,
Yeah.
which is that speaking faster does not mean speaking unclearly.
Yes, this
Yeah.
is so crucial.
Right.
The goal is not to just like mumble your words
Yeah.
or rush through them so that nobody can understand you.
Right.
The goal is to speak fluently.
Yeah, with good pronunciation.
With good pronunciation and to reduce those unnecessary pauses.
Right.
But not to sacrifice clarity for speed.
Exactly.
So it's a balance.
Yeah.
It's a balance between those two.
So how do we actually achieve that balance?
How do we get there?
Well, the video presents a series of really helpful techniques.
Yeah.
And I think the first one that we should dive into is the idea of thinking in English.
Okay, thinking in English, yeah.
And this is, I think, a foundational skill for anyone who wants to speak English faster because
It makes such a difference.
It does, because a lot of learners, they get stuck in this pattern of thinking in their native language.
And then translating into English in their head.
And that takes so much time.
It takes so much time, and it creates all this hesitation, and it just slows you down so much.
Yeah, and you can just imagine like the cognitive load that it puts on your brain.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting, like to have to constantly be switching back and forth between two languages, and it's just like a recipe for slow speech.
Yeah, it's like driving with the brakes on all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So the key is to try to train your brain to think directly in English.
Yeah.
And I know this can seem really daunting, especially if you're not at an advanced level.
Yeah.
But it's something that you can start doing at any stage of your language journey.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of practice.
Yeah. And the video gives some really concrete tips for how to do that.
Yeah.
Like one of them is to just start describing your surroundings in English.
Yeah.
Like just as you're going about your day.
Right.
Just mentally label the things that you see.
Like I see a red car.
Yeah, I see a blue sky. There's a tall building over there.
Yeah. You know, those kinds of things.
Yeah, and it might seem really simple, but it's actually a really effective way to start activating your English vocabulary.
Yeah, and to get your brain used to thinking in English without having to worry about grammar or, you know, having a full conversation.
Right, it's just like a low pressure way to start integrating English into your daily life.
And you can do it anywhere, you know, while you're cooking, while you're walking down the street. While
you're showering.
Yeah, exactly.
While you're, you know, getting dressed in the morning.
Just make it a habit.
Yeah.
To think in English as much as possible.
The video also talks about this idea of having like silent conversations with yourself in English.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
Like, you know.
So imagine that you're talking to someone.
Yeah.
In your head.
Yeah.
And you're using English.
Yeah. So like, for example, if you have a meeting coming up.
Right.
You could just kind of mentally rehearse what you're going to say.
Like, okay, I need to tell my boss about this project. Maybe you can start by saying this and then...
Yeah, or if you're going to order food at a restaurant, you know, you could just kind of like run through the dialogue.
Yeah, just practice it in your head.
In your head, yeah. And that way, when you actually have to speak, it's like you've already done it once before.
Yeah, your brain's already kind of warmed up.
Yeah, it's like a mental warm-up.
Exactly.
Another really cool tip that the video gives is to change the language on your phone to English.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
That's such a simple thing, but it can make such a big difference.
Yeah, because you're constantly exposed to the language, even when you're not actively studying.
Yeah, and it's like your brain is just absorbing it.
Yeah, passively.
Yeah, passively in the background.
Right.
And then finally, the video also talks about the importance of reading in English.
Yeah.
So, you know, whether it's books or articles or even just social media posts.
Whatever you enjoy reading.
Yeah, whatever you enjoy reading, make sure that you're reading in English because it's a great way to...
Expand your vocabulary.
Yeah, expand your vocabulary and to get used to seeing English sentence structures.
And to see how native speakers actually use the language in real contexts.
So all of these things are really helpful for kind of getting yourself into that English thinking mode.
Right.
Okay, so let's move on to the next technique, which is about using common phrases and sentence starters.
Okay, so this is all about working smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that slows people down when they're speaking is trying to construct every sentence from scratch.
Yeah.
Like trying to come up with the perfect grammar and the perfect vocabulary in the moment.
Yeah.
But native speakers don't do that.
No, they don't.
They rely on a lot of prefabricated phrases,
right.
Chunks of language that they've already internalized.
Like, how are you?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm fine, thanks.
Right.
Like you don't even think about that, you just say it.
Yeah, it's automatic.
So the more of these phrases that you can learn and internalize,
the faster you'll be able to speak.
Yeah. And the less you'll have to think in the moment.
And the video gives some great examples of these kinds of phrases, like sentence starters.
Yeah.
For giving your opinion.
Yeah. Like, I think that.
Yeah.
Or in my opinion.
Yeah, or from my point of view.
Yeah.
And these are just like little phrases that you can use to kind of get started.
Right.
Without having to...
Just think too much.
Yeah, without having to think too much.
And they also give phrases for agreeing and disagreeing. Like, I totally agree with you. Or that's a good point. But or I see what you mean, but I think.
And these are all really useful for keeping the conversation flowing.
Right.
Because you don't have to like pause and think about
how to respond.
Yeah, how to respond.
Yeah.
You just kind of have these ready-made phrases that you can use.
And it makes you sound more confident too.
Yeah.
Because you're not hesitating as much.
Yeah. And the video also suggests learning phrases for common situations.
Right.
Like ordering food at a restaurant,
Yeah.
or asking for directions,
Yeah.
or making a phone call.
Yeah, or making a phone call.
You know, all those everyday situations
Yeah.
where you might need to use English.
So the idea is to kind of anticipate
Right.
those situations
Yeah.
and learn the phrases that you're most likely to need.
Exactly.
And then the video also emphasizes the importance of practicing these phrases,
Yeah.
like not just reading them,
Right.
but actually saying them out loud and
Yeah.
writing them down.
Repetition is key.
Yeah, repetition is key because it helps you to internalize them
Yeah.
and to make them more automatic.
So they become second nature.
Yeah, so that when you need them,
Right.
you don't have to think about them.
They just come out naturally.
They just come out naturally, yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next technique, which is about reducing hesitation and filler words.
Oh, yeah, this is a big one.
This is a big one.
I think everyone struggles with this to some extent.
Yeah, definitely.
You know those little words like
Like, like...
withdraw, like so
Right.
they just kind of creep into our speech.
They do.
And they make us sound
Hesitant.
hesitant and uncertain.
And less confident.
Yeah, and they really slow down our speech.
Yeah, they disrupt the flow.
Yeah.
And they can be really distracting for the listener.
Yeah. So what does the video suggest that we do about these filler words?
One of the most powerful things you can do is actually just pause.
Pause.
Yeah. Instead of saying,
Yeah.
just take a brief silent pause.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So like instead of saying, I think that's a good idea.
You'd say, I think,
I think.
pause.
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
Ah.
And it might feel a little awkward at first,
Yeah.
but it actually makes you sound more confident.
Really?
Yeah. Because it shows that you're thinking.
Yeah.
You're taking a moment to gather your thoughts.
Yeah. And you're not afraid of the silence.
Right.
Huh. That's a good point.
And native speakers do this all the time.
Yeah, they do.
They use pauses to emphasize certain words.
Yeah.
Or to create a dramatic effect.
Yeah.
So it's not something to be afraid of.
Huh. So it's actually like a rhetorical tool.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
The video also suggests doing some timed speaking practice.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about that.
So this is basically where you choose a topic.
Yes.
And you give yourself a certain amount of time to speak about it without stopping.
Yeah.
Like maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And the goal is not to be perfect or to use perfect grammar.
Right.
It's just to keep speaking.
To keep the flow going.
Yeah, to keep the flow going
Yeah.
and to train your brain to think and speak in English without hesitating.
Yeah. And I think this is something that you can do on your own.
Yeah, you can record yourself.
Yeah, you can record yourself and listen back to it and see where you hesitated and
Yeah.
what filler words you used.
And then you can focus on those areas
Yeah.
in your next practice session.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Another tip that the video gives is to prepare answers for common questions.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do? Or where are you from?
Yeah.
Because these are questions that you're likely to be asked a lot.
Yeah, especially if you're an English learner.
Right.
And if you have a prepared answer,
Yeah.
you're less likely to hesitate
Right.
when you're asked those questions.
You'll be able to respond more quickly and confidently.
Yeah.
So it's a good idea to just spend some time thinking about
Yeah.
what those answers might be.
Yeah, and write them down.
Yeah, write them down, practice them
Practice them. Yeah.
until they sound natural.
Okay, so we've talked about thinking in English.
Yeah.
We've talked about using common phrases.
Yeah.
We've talked about reducing hesitation.
Yep.
What's next?
Okay, so the next technique is called shadowing.
Shadowing. Okay, I've heard of this before.
Yeah, it's a really popular technique.
Yeah, but can you explain exactly what it is?
Yeah, so basically shadowing is when you listen to a native speaker
Yeah.
and you repeat what you're saying as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Like you're their shadow.
Like you're their echo.
Yeah, like you're their echo.
Okay.
And the goal is to match their speed, their rhythm, their pronunciation,
Okay.
everything.
So it's not just about understanding the words.
Right. It's about imitating the sounds
Okay.
and the flow of the language.
Okay.
And the video gives 3 steps for doing shadowing effectively.
Okay, what's step 1?
Step 1 is to choose the right audio.
Okay, so what makes good audio for shadowing?
You want something that's short
Okay.
and clear
Okay.
and spoken at a natural speed,
Okay.
not too fast, not too slow.
Okay.
And you want something that's interesting to you,
Okay.
something that you'll actually enjoy listening to.
Okay, so like a podcast or a YouTube video.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Or a TED Talk.
Okay, what's step 2?
Step 2 is to listen and repeat immediately.
Immediately.
Yeah, don't pause.
Okay.
Even if you don't understand every word,
Okay.
just try to keep up with the speaker
Okay.
and match their speed and their rhythm
Okay.
as best you can. And Don't worry about making mistakes.
Okay.
The goal is just to get your mouth moving
Okay. Yeah.
and to get your brain used to the sounds of the language.
Okay, what's step 3?
Step 3 is to keep practicing.
Okay.
Listen to the same audio multiple times
Okay.
until you can say it fluently and quickly
Okay.
and without hesitation.
Okay, so basically it's just a matter of repetition.
Exactly.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
more you practice, the better you'll get at it.
Okay.
And what if I'm a beginner?
Yeah.
Like, what if I can't keep up with the speaker?
Well, you can start with slower audio
Okay.
and gradually increase the speed as you get better.
Okay.
You can also use subtitles at first
Okay.
to help you follow along.
Yeah.
But eventually you want to try to do it without subtitles
Okay.
so that you're really challenging your listening skills.
Okay.
And the great thing about shadowing is that it trains your brain to think in English
Yeah.
because you're not translating in your head.
Right.
You're just reacting to the sounds.
So it's a really powerful way to improve your fluency.
Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the next technique, which is imitation.
Imitation.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is similar to shadowing,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit more advanced.
Okay.
Because with imitation, you're not just repeating what the speaker is saying.
Yeah.
You're also trying to copy their style,
Okay.
their tone of voice,
Okay.
their facial expressions,
Right.
their body language.
Okay, so it's like acting.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
But the goal is to sound more natural and more like a native speaker.
Okay.
And the video gives 3 steps for doing imitation effectively.
Okay, what's step 1?
Step 1 is to choose a native speaker that you want to imitate.
Okay, so like someone whose voice I like.
Yeah, someone whose style you admire.
Okay.
Maybe it's a YouTuber or a podcaster
Okay.
or an actor.
Okay.
Anyone whose English you really like.
Okay, what's step 2?
Step 2 is to watch and listen carefully.
Okay.
Pay attention to how they pronounce their words, their tone of voice,
Okay.
their rhythm, their
Oh.
facial expressions,
Okay.
everything.
Okay.
Really try to observe the details.
Okay, what's step 3?
Step 3 is to imitate everything you observed.
Everything.
Yeah, try to copy their voice, their rhythm, their facial expressions, everything.
Okay.
And the video suggests recording yourself
Okay.
so you can compare your imitation to the original
Okay, that's a good idea.
and you can see where you need to improve.
Okay.
And the video even mentions that actors use this technique.
Really?
Yeah, to learn accents.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So it's a really effective way to improve your pronunciation and your overall speaking style.
Okay, cool. And for beginners, would you recommend starting with short clips?
Yeah, I would start with short clips.
Okay.
Like 30-second dialogues or something like that.
Okay.
And repeat them until you can imitate them really well.
Okay.
And don't forget to copy the speaker's energy and tone as well.
Yeah.
Like if they sound excited, you should sound excited too. If they sound serious, you should sound serious.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so now that we've talked about some techniques for speaking faster,
Yeah.
let's talk about some common mistakes to avoid.
Yeah, because I think it's really easy to fall into these traps
Yeah,
when
definitely.
you're trying to speed up your speech.
Yeah, especially when you're first starting out.
Yeah.
So the first mistake that the video mentions is prioritizing speed over clarity.
Yeah.
So some learners, they just focus on talking as fast as possible.
Yeah.
But they forget about pronunciation.
Yeah.
And they end up mumbling their words
Yeah.
or skipping sounds.
Yeah.
And this makes it really hard for people to understand them.
Yeah.
So it defeats the whole purpose of speaking faster.
Right.
Because if people can't understand
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how fast you're talking.
Yeah.
So the key is to find a balance
Yeah.
between speed and clarity.
Yeah. And I think one way to do that is to record yourself
Yeah.
and listen back to it
Yeah.
and see if you can understand yourself. Right. If you can't, then you need to slow down and work on your pronunciation.
The second mistake that the video mentions is not focusing on pronunciation.
Yeah.
So some learners, they think that pronunciation is not that important,
Yeah.
but it's actually crucial
Yeah.
because if you mispronounce words,
Yeah.
it can lead to misunderstandings
Yeah.
and it can slow down the conversation.
Yeah.
So it's really important to practice your pronunciation
Yeah.
and to make sure that you're saying the sounds correctly.
Yeah. And I think it's also helpful to be aware of the sounds that are difficult for you and to focus on those in your practice.
And the video suggests practicing pronunciation slowly at first
Yeah.
and then gradually increasing the speed
Yeah, that's a good idea.
as you get better.
Yeah.
The third mistake that the video mentions is overusing filler words.
Yeah.
So we talked about this earlier,
Yeah.
but it's worth repeating
Yeah.
because it's a really common mistake
Yeah.
and it can really sabotage your fluency.
Yeah.
So try to be mindful of how often you're using filler words
Yeah.
and try to replace them with pauses
Yeah.
or with more meaningful words.
Yeah.
The fourth mistake that the video mentions is not practicing in real situations.
Yeah.
So a lot of learners, they practice speaking on their own,
Yeah.
but they never actually practice speaking with other people.
Yeah.
And this is a problem because speaking in real situations is different.
Yeah, it's more challenging.
Yeah, it's more challenging
Yeah.
because you have to react to what the other person is saying.
Yeah.
And you have to think on your feet.
Yeah, and there's more pressure.
Yeah, there's more pressure.
Yeah.
So it's important to get as much practice as possible
Yeah.
in real situations.
Yeah, and the video suggests some ways to do that.
Yeah.
Like joining conversation groups.
Yeah.
Or finding a language partner.
Yeah.
Or even just talking to yourself in the mirror.
Yeah, or ordering food at a restaurant.
Yeah, or asking for directions. Like,
Yeah.
just put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And use your English. Yeah.
As much as possible.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah.
It's part of the learning process.
Yeah. Okay, so now that we've talked about some common mistakes,
Yeah.
let's talk about some daily practice exercises that people can do to improve their speaking speed.
Okay, so the first exercise that the video suggests is the 1-minute speaking challenge.
Okay, the 1-minute speaking challenge.
Yeah.
What is that?
So basically, you choose a topic
Yeah.
and you speak about it for 1 minute without stopping.
Okay.
And the goal is not to be perfect.
Right.
It's just to keep speaking.
To keep the flow going.
Yeah, to keep the flow going.
Okay.
And to train your brain to think and speak in English without hesitating.
Okay.
So you can choose any topic you want,
Right.
like your hobbies, your
Yeah.
job,
Right.
your family,
Well,
anything.
Okay.
And you can record yourself.
Okay.
So you can listen back to it
Okay.
and see where you hesitated
Okay.
and what filler words you used. Okay.
And then you can focus on those areas
Okay.
in your next practice session.
Okay, that sounds like a good exercise.
Yeah, it's a good way to practice fluency
Yeah.
and to get more comfortable with speaking for longer periods of time.
Yeah. Okay, what's the next exercise?
The next exercise is shadowing.
Shadowing again.
Yeah, shadowing is really important.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about it again.
Okay.
And as we said before, shadowing is when you listen to a native speaker
Yeah.
and you repeat what they're saying as quickly as possible.
Okay.
And the goal is to match their speed, their rhythm, their pronunciation,
Okay.
everything.
Okay.
So you can find audio or video on YouTube,
Okay.
TED Talks, podcasts,
Okay.
movies,
Okay.
anything.
Okay.
And you can start with slower audio
Okay.
and gradually increase the speed as you get better.
Okay.
You can also use subtitles at first
Okay.
to help you follow along,
Okay.
but eventually you want to try to do it without subtitles
Okay.
so that you're really challenging your listening skills.
Okay.
And the great thing about shadowing is that it trains your brain to think in English because you're not translating in your head.
Right.
You're just reacting to the sounds.
Right.
So they're a really powerful way to improve your fluency.
Okay.
Okay, what's the next exercise?
The next exercise is speed reading aloud.
Speed reading aloud.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where you take a text,
Yeah.
like an article or
Yeah.
a book,
Yeah.
and you read it aloud as fast as you can
Okay.
while still maintaining clarity.
Okay.
So the goal is not to just mumble the words,
Right.
but to actually pronounce them correctly
Okay.
and to read at a speed that's challenging but still understandable.
Okay.
And if you stumble over a word,
Yeah.
just repeat it